Welcome back, everybody. And today we have really traveled virtually to almost everywhere in the world. This morning we were in Tokyo in Japan, then we were in New Delhi in India, and then in Berlin in Germany. And now it's time to learn how to do business in Israel. And we have Osnat Lautman in Tel Aviv. Hello, Osnat.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, do you want to start sharing your presentation? Before you start, one practical thing. Everybody, turn off your cameras and your microphone until we tell you to turn them on again. Okay, so it's all yours.
All right, thank you. So let's get started. So we're going to have a lecture, as said, about the Israeli business culture. And before we're going to start, and I said, my name is Osnat Lautman, and I'm an Israeli organizational consultant. And before we're going to start, I think it will be interesting actually to start with a real story. So it's a real story about someone from Israel, an Israeli that used to work for a global company. And he flew to the United States to meet some of his colleagues. And they got to the place, they rented a car, and they drove from one place to another. And after a few hours of driving, actually, they got hungry and thirsty. So any guesses where they stop to eat and drink? Anyone? You can, hopefully you're going to participate in this lecture. So what do you think? Where they stopped in the United States to eat and drink? Okay, well, they stopped at the McDonald's. So they got into the place. The place was packed with people. And I don't know how much you know us, Israelis, but we don't have much patience. So he started looking around and he noticed that there is a lady sitting outside next to the window where the drive-thru is, when cars are coming, actually. So we went there by foot and asked the McDonald's employee if he can order an hamburger from her. So she was shocked. She said, excuse me, we all order over here only to people that come with car and you came by foot. So the Israeli said, well, I know that, but look behind you. The place is packed with people. So maybe you can help me. So she insisted on saying, no, she can't, and so on. So the Israeli went back to the place, stood in the line, but he needed to give it one more chance. So he went to the window again, and it looks like that. He was gesturing like he's honking the horn of the car, like to-do, going like that, and smiling to her, and with kind of a joke. What do you think? You think that she gave him an hamburger or she didn't?
She didn't.
She didn't. Okay. Well, I'm not going to share with you right now the end of the story. I think it will better to a little bit understand cultures in general, and of course the Israeli business culture. And then I promise at the end of the lecture to share with you the end of the story. So what we're going to have, actually the session is going to be divided into 3 parts. We will start with general introduction about culture. Then we're going to speak about the Israeli values and some other cultures too. We're going to drill down and I'm going to share with you my research, and I'm going to share with you the main Israeli cultural characteristics and how to build effective business relationship with us. And then we will end the session with some food for thought. It's going to be a little bit about innovation in Israel, not about the technology, but some other things that I think it's important to understand. And if you can see at the bottom, it's written call for action. It's kind of a reminder for me that I need to end the McDonald's story. So before we're going to start, let me say a few words about myself. So I work as an organizational consultant since 2007. And a few years ago, my husband got a job offer and we moved to live in Hoboken, in New Jersey. So for those of you who don't know Hoboken, it's an amazing place, in my opinion, with a beautiful view to the city, to Manhattan. But with all that beauty, it was kind of challenging for me to live over there. I worked in a global company, an American one, and I studied at NYU. And I couldn't understand how come in one country, in Israel, I used to teach other people how to sell, how to give service. And then when I actually live, work, and study in the United States, people don't really appreciate my behaviors, my innovative ideas, the way I saw them, the multitasking that I used to do, and all that. So actually, all that was a decade ago. And in the last decade, it actually started by asking people if they can share their experience while working with Israelis. And I have been interviewing more than 350 people from all over the world. So my research and my vast experience giving consulting services to people around the globe, all that I would like to share with you today. So let's get started. So research has divided all kinds of countries into clusters, saying that if you belong to the same cluster, you're similar to one another, not the same, of course. So people from Brazil will belong to the Latin American cluster, people from the US to the Anglo-American cluster, Swedish people to the Nordic, and so on. So question, in which cluster do you think you will find Israelis? Anyone?
What do you say? In all of them.
In all of them? Okay, that's interesting. Well, actually, I found this research in a book called Human Behavior at Work. And over there, I saw a footnote saying that Israel actually, similar to what you just said, is not belong to none of the clusters. People in Israel will have different values, different beliefs, different behaviors, different language. Later on, I must admit that that's a kind of an old research, but later on they decided to add Israel into the Latin European cluster together with people from Italy and Spain. So what's so special about Israel? So first of all, let's look at the map. So you can see the globes, and what can you see Israel? Well, it's kind of hard. It's a tiny place with specific locations surrounded by other countries. So let's zoom in. So first of all, it covers an area of a little bit more than 20,000 square kilometers with only 9 million citizens. And because of the situation and because of the size and the amount of people, we know from day one that if we think about a product, it must be global, and also that we need to practice our English as a second language. Israel is also an ethnic melting pot. So at the beginning, we got our declarations of independence in 1948, and people arrived from East Europe and North Africa and former Soviet Union and Ethiopia. We're very happy for this mixture in Israel, and actually those were brave people that decided to come to Israel to build something out of nothing. So you can look at the pictures from 1948, and then in some other pictures from today, from 2020, that people actually call us the Startup Nation. So we are very proud of the process that we have done till these days. Also, because of the situation in Israel, it's mandatory to serve in the army. So we serve men and women, and it's happened the majority of the people, it's either served in the army in the past or we are still serving in the army. So the values of the army became the values of the civilians. So if in the army, soldiers will use courage, later on, those soldiers, the civilians, will use the same courage in our daily lives and also in business. If in the army we learn how to plan, we also learn that any plan can change at any moment, and we learn how to use improvisation in our life. And regarding teamwork, the way we see it is one for all and then all for one. A little bit about religion in Israel, because it is a fact of life here in Israel. So it also influences every aspect of our daily life. So we work from Sunday to Thursday. So actually the weekend is Friday and Saturday. We call Saturday, we call it Shabbat, and actually it's a holiday for us. There is no public transportation. Many of the restaurants that are kosher will be closed on Saturday. And Hebrew is our official language. So if you look at the pie, you will see that 74% of the population in Israel are actually secular, like me. But even if we're secular, the religion is really impact our life. And also 75% of the populations are Jews. We have 21% Arabs and only 4% for Christians and other cultures. So I feel a bit heavy to speak about, the map, the borders in Israel, the religion, the situation, all that. So here are some cool pictures from Tel Aviv. Not from these days, I must admit. It's just before COVID started. So you can see Pride Parade, you can see the beach, Rothschild Boulevard, and also the slogan from the last Eurovision that was in Israel, with saying, "Dare to dream." So after speaking about all that, what do you think, what's the meaning of culture actually? What's the definition of culture? Anyone will be happy to hear you. Anyone? What is culture? Okay.
Well,
so
it's this melting pot that you mentioned before, of people from all over the world, giving a little bit of culture.
So you see culture as a melting pot?
I wouldn't say so, but I think that it has influenced a lot in your culture.
Okay, what else? Anything else?
Well, culture can be food, music, way of enjoying each other's company and so on. I think that's culture.
Interesting. Okay, so it's true. Actually, culture is kind of an umbrella term, and it's a combination of what you see above the surface. You can hear my Israeli accent when I speak English. You can see my verbal and nonverbal communication, what I wear, all that is part of who I am, and that's above the surface. What you cannot see, it's what below the surface, the beliefs, the values, okay, where are you coming from, and so on. So actually, I provided a lot of workshops all over the world, and I asked the participants to share their values from their own country. So you can see right now a list of values that actually Israelis wrote about themselves, okay? So creative, survivors, very direct, dynamic, improvisation, aggressive. You can see family, another one, family, aggressive. The one that is actually the full one on the last list, we know better as a value. And by the way, this workshop actually took place in Munich, and you needed to see the faces of the German people when they saw it. We know better as a value, and one of them even say, well, of course the German people think that they know better than others, but he found it kind of a chutzpah to actually have it written, okay? Daring. It's not only thinking that I'm better than others, but actually saying it out loud in front of other people. So below that, we can also see mutual responsibility and criticism. So let me share with you some other lists that I think that you will find interest in. So first of all, a few workshops that I provided in the Swedish embassy in Israel. So you can see different delegations that arrive to Israel, different people. And again, we ask them, what do you think? How do you see the culture of Sweden? So consequence, stick to the rules, risk averse, which is absolutely the opposite of the Israeli culture. Also privacy, legume, modesty. And I think it's very interesting to see the differences just by reading the values. Also workshops that I provided in Boston and New York, and you can see how beautiful it's written and organized. And you can see the freedom and pride, the success, work ethic, even grit and status. And the last list that I want to share with you is actually wonderful workshops that I provided in Madrid. And it was extremely funny for me because those people actually didn't write anything that belonged to the work arena. It's all about having fun. So we have siesta and parties and football and food. And the one that I like the most is this one, is the fourth one from the top on the last list, which they wrote that they're committed to flexible deadlines. So I love it. So it's interesting to see all the differences that actually people wrote about themselves. So let us drill down a little bit and speak about my research. And this time it's not going to be about how Israelis see themselves, but actually how others see us. Okay? So I must say before I'm going to share with you the main Israeli business cultural characteristics that, of course, research on cultures deals with groups and therefore leans on generalizations. So it's important to understand that, of course, I believe that each of us is unique and individual, right? And we are not the same. But in order to learn about others, it's better to build a pattern and then drill down and understand the differences. Okay, so let's get started. So first of all, that's my book. It's a bestseller in Amazon. The name of the book is Israeli Business Culture. It's available in English and also in Chinese, in Mandarin, and in simplified Chinese. And what I did actually, so I took the word Israeli and I used it as an acronym in a way that each letter is the beginning of one of the Israelis' main characteristics. Okay? So we have I, informal, not only in the way we dress, but also in the way we communicate with one another. Do you think that you know who is in the picture? Any guessing? Well, that's a bit hard. This is Ben-Gurion. He was the first prime minister in Israel, and I think it's very informal to have a picture of him on the beach, on his head, with bathing suit, practicing yoga. This is quite informal. And then we have S, straightforward, because we use a direct style of speech. R, risk-taking. A, ambitious. E, entrepreneurial, and I see these three as one unit because an entrepreneur is someone that will do everything in order to reach his or her goal with a lot of risk-taking and ambitious, which kind of bring us the entrepreneurial individuality. And guessing, do you know who is in the picture? That's easier than the first one. So this is Gal Gadot. She's an Israeli actor. She's the Wonder Woman. She's not an entrepreneur, I think so. I mean, she's starting to make some movies, but still, I think she's, she made something all the way to Hollywood and she deserved the spot. And then we have El, loud, not only for our voices, but also for the intense life in Israel. And the last I is improvisational because we always try to think outside of the box. So I think it's going to be, that exercise itself is going to be a bit challenging. So what I would like us to do right now is a quick exercise. I would like you to go to www.menti.com, okay? And think about the characteristics that I just mentioned. The informality, straightforward, risk-taking, ambitious, entrepreneurial, loud, and improvisational. And try to write which characteristic you think is the best, is the most challenging while you work with Israelis. So it doesn't matter if you're from Brazil, Germany, Sweden, the US, South Korea, right? Just think which characteristic is the most challenging one. So you use the code 1648675. I hope that's clear. Do you know how to go to menti.com? Good. All right. So let's go there and see if anything comes. So which characteristics? Okay. Wow. Okay. So one of you think that loud actually is the most challenging one. And another one thinks that actually straightforward will be a challenge while working with Israelis. Okay. Going to have a look at that later on. So if you would like to actually, one more with loud, that will be interesting. If you would like to share with me any situation, I will be happy to hear it. But otherwise, anything that you would like to share, or I'm not sure if you have any experience working with Israelis or not, but if not, later on. So it's interesting to see, actually, it's not the first time that it's happening to me, that actually loud give some rank regarding what is going to be challenged for other people to work with Israelis. So let's get back to the presentation and speak about my research and other researchers that actually will give us better explanation of the characteristics or how to bridge the cultural gap. So power distance is actually a term that was made by Gerrit Hofstede. He's from the Netherlands. And actually he used to work for IBM. And he found that in different branches of the IBM, they communicate different with one another. And one of the terms that he spoke about is power distance. Power distance is the degree of importance that you give to someone that is older than you or senior than you. Okay, so you can see different countries on your right, and then different rank. Which rank do you think belong to which country? And the highest rank you get is the higher hierarchy you have in this country. So any guessing? Which country got 77, which one got 60? 54, 40, 33, and 13 in power distance, in hierarchy.
I would say that 13 is definitely Sweden.
Wow, definitely Sweden.
Because here it's like, people tend to be not so, the hierarchies are not so big. While, for example, South Korea could be a 60 or a 77. Same with Japan. There is very important, the hierarchy is very important.
Okay, good, thanks. Any other suggestions? No, we'll stay with that. So you're saying definitely 13 for Sweden. And I will tell you that, well, that's the results actually. So Sweden got 33, Israel got 13, US 40, Japan 54, South Korea 60, and India 77. Okay? So maybe that's surprising for you. Let me share with you an example. So actually, again, before COVID, a delegation from Belgium, arrived to Israel. All of them were CEOs, and they came to Israel to meet some startup companies. And one of them, when I shared with them the presentation and the term power distance, one of them just told me, well, she said, the Belgian lady, the CEO, that she gave a lecture in one of the startups company in Israel. And when the lecture was ended, a girl, an Israeli, approached to her and she told her, well, the lecture was amazing and we must collaborate. And Belgium, by the way, got 64 in the power distance rank, meaning they have a high hierarchy comparing to Israel. So she told her, well, the lecture was amazing, we must collaborate. So I said, okay, and then what? So she said, well, I will never collaborate with her. And I asked her why. And she said, well, who is she that she will tell me what to do? So that's the way the Israelis, well, we are very much informal in Israel. And sometimes we just translate the Hebrew language into English without thinking about translating the culture. So maybe instead of saying we must collaborate, maybe adding a question mark at the end and saying, what do you think? Maybe we could collaborate. And then that will soften the message in a way. Okay? So speaking about not only hierarchy, speaking about the style of speech. So I think it's quite clear that we in Israel, we use a direct style of speech comparing to other countries. And it will be interesting to see us in a spectrum, actually, ranging from using a direct style of speech to an indirect one. So Israel will be in one corner with using a very kind of direct style of speech, while China or even Japan, even further, in a way that they will use an indirect style of speech. So, for example, if someone in China don't agree with his manager, it will be only silence in the room. In India, if you don't agree with your manager, you will say yes. And yes can be anything. I agree, I don't agree, nobody really knows. And in the middle, we have kind of a diplomatic cultures like Sweden, like people from Brazil, from the US, and some other countries. They will try to use kind of a diplomatic style of speech. So, for example, if someone from, let's say, a British guy will say, I was a bit disappointed that. What do you think he's meaning by saying, I was a bit disappointed?
And he is very disappointed.
And
he's trying to avoid conflict.
Exactly. Very good. Meaning that he is very upset. Unfortunately, not all Israelis, but many of us will translate that to, well, it's not a big deal. He will get over it. Because he just said it's a bit disappointed, right? Another example, or not another example, just thinking of not only British people with this kind of diplomatic sense, but maybe people from Sweden that maybe will use a calm tone of voice, positive words and a smile. And sometimes it's important to understand that it's not only what you're saying, but how you're saying it. So my recommendation to people that more of using of indirect style of speech, when you work with Israelis, my recommendation is to use direct style of speech, and also not to be offensive from that. So not to take it personally, the Israeli directness. Okay? Let's speak a little bit about emotions and criticism in a way. It's written in the top, negotiations between different cultures, but let's see it just as a dialogue. So where do you think the Israeli will be, the Sweden people will be, people in Brazil, right? In which quarter? Do you use emotions? Do you confront one another? So actually that's a beautiful research that actually was published at Harvard Business Review magazine. It was written by Erin Meyer in a book called The Cultural Map. And you can see the results. So Israel in one corner with a lot of emotions and criticism. And then you will see people in Japan and even Sweden, all the way down at another quarter when you will decide to avoid criticism and use less emotions. Let me share with you a short video that actually explains this map. At the end of the video, they will end by speaking about building trust. So we will continue from that point. Let's watch the video.
You might be a star negotiator in your own country, but in today's global economy, your skills may not automatically translate to other cultures. For instance, in some cultures, it's entirely appropriate to show emotion during a negotiation, to raise your voice, laugh passionately, or even put a friendly arm around your counterpart. In others, this much expression not only feels intrusive or surprising, but may be viewed as immature or unprofessional. Then there's open disagreement. Negotiators often assume that more expressive cultures are also more confrontational, but that isn't always the case. In some countries, such as France and Israel, emotions pour out, including disagreement. But for other very expressive cultures, such as Brazil, Mexico, and Saudi Arabia, open disagreement could be seen as insulting. Some less expressive cultures, such as Denmark, Germany, and the Netherlands, see open disagreement and debate as positive and necessary, as long as it's expressed calmly and factually. Others tend to be both less emotional and non-confrontational, which means you'll have to be especially attuned to subtle cues for both positive and negative responses. It's also important to learn how others build trust. There are two distinct types, cognitive and affective, and in a business setting, the dominant type of trust varies from one culture to another. Cognitive trust is task-based. It comes from the head and is built on your counterpart's accomplishments, skills, and reliability. American culture offers a good example of this kind of trust. In the United States, getting too emotionally close to a business counterpart is seen as unprofessional, and mixing the personal and professional is seen as risky. Affective trust is relationship-based and comes from the heart. It arises from the feelings of emotional closeness, empathy, and friendship that are developed gradually through sharing meals, evening drinks, and coffee breaks. In China, for instance, negotiators are unlikely to trust their counterparts until an effective connection has been made. Adapting your negotiation approach accordingly will help you get to yes, or si, ja, oui, hi, and da.
So let's continue from the topic that they ended, which is building trust. So there are some countries that building trust by being task-oriented, meaning that if you will go to an interview in the United States, people will go by your CV. It means a lot. In Israel, it doesn't mean that the CV is not important. Of course, it's extremely important, but it's not enough. In Israel, it's a lot about building relationships with other people. So it will happen to you that if you arrive to Israel or if you do business with Israelis, people will get into your personal space by asking personal questions. So again, my recommendation is not to be offended by that, but actually be happy that the people that you are communicating with from Israel is actually want to build trust with you and want to build relationship with you. What actually brings me to share with you some food for thought regarding innovation in Israel. So you can see in front of you a list of companies that we are very proud of. All of them are actually Israelis companies. So I'm not going to speak about the technology, but actually give you food for thought about the roots that brought us to bring so many startups into Israel. So actually, first of all, is the objective circumstance that we mentioned at the beginning, the size of Israel, the amount of people, the fact that we don't do business with our neighbors, and that we think about our product to be as a global one from day one. And then the high power melting pot. At the beginning, that people arrived to Israel, our mothers and fathers, that they were brave to come to Israel and to build something out of nothing. And then we mentioned the military service, that actually the values of the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, became the values of the civilians, including courage, teamwork, improvisation. We didn't mention that in this lecture, but actually the acceptance of failure is inseparable part of the Israeli culture. So if you will come to Israel and you're going to meet some entrepreneurs, they're going to tell you, well, that's my third startup and I failed already a few times. And we're learning from our failures. So that's something we believe in Israel. And the beautiful ecosystem that we have in Israel, the support of the government, the universities, all that is very important for our success in Israel. But also the story of Israel, that we tell ourselves that never again. So we're survivors that dare to dream, but not only dare to dream, but also dare to improvise all the time. So from a book called Border Crossing that actually was written by two people from the US that immigrate into Israel. And they wanted to explain how Israelis see rules, that actually we see a rule only as a guideline. So you can see a circle when non-Israelis color the circle inside the line. And then the same circle when Israelis choose to color the circle outside of the lines. And again, it's not because we don't know how to color, it's because we always try to think outside of the box. So speaking about that, it's for me a reminder actually for a call for action, actually a reminder to end the story that we start our lecture with. So what do you think again? Do you think that he gave him, the employee from the McDonald's, she gave him the hamburger or she didn't? Right? What you said at the beginning actually was that she didn't. And that's true. She didn't, but I think it's what's important in this story to understand the Israeli perspective of trying again and again. And when I met this Israeli, and when he came to me, he said, well, you know, at the end, she didn't give me the hamburger. I went back to the line, but I was happy just because I tried. And we need to know that we lose some, we win some. But the process is very important into the situation, not only the end results. So that's it. It was my pleasure to deliver this lecture to you. You're more than welcome to contact me and to ask any questions. But also now, if you have any questions regarding the topic that we discussed about the Israeli business culture of innovation, you are more than welcome to ask. Any questions?
Yeah, please leave your questions in the chat. And thank you so much. That was so interesting, actually.
Thank
Well,
you.
I have a few questions myself, actually, because after, I mean, I can see some similarities, for example, with Sweden when it comes to startup. As here also, it's like the mentality is like the products, our products are going to be global, has to be global.
Right, because you're also a small country.
Exactly. And then teamwork, that's also something very important here as well. And I'm thinking about teamwork and collaborations, because the meetings that the startup are going to have with Israel companies have everything to do with collaborations. Do you know if corporates in Israel, are they used to collaborate with startups? Because you're a really big startup nation.
Right, it's true, there is a collaboration, but when you start speaking, something come into my mind that actually I met a lot of delegations from Sweden that arrived to Israel in collaboration with Vinnova organization and with the Swedish embassy in Israel. And actually, when I met them, I asked them, well, I showed them the Bloomberg research, which shows that actually Sweden is much better than Israel is in innovation. So how come so many people from Sweden arrived to Israel and not, unfortunately, not as many Israelis arrived to Sweden to learn from you? So they were very modest in their response and they didn't feel like comfortable in responding to that. But actually what I understood at the end of the day, that, you know, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, that we will listen more and speak less. And this is something we need to learn from you, from the Swedish people, that actually you are modest and you know how to learn from others. So it's not only about taking risk and know that you know better than others and succeed or not, but also about admitting what you can learn and be very successful in what you do.
And what would you say is your success actually in Israel?
What do
you spoke a little bit about it, but why are startups from Israel so successful? I mean, you said that you have a great ecosystem.
That's true. So we mentioned all the reasons. We mentioned the army. We mentioned the situation, the circumstance, the size, the innovation, the way that we think outside of the box. We mentioned the fact that we don't afraid to fail. But actually everything is, we can summarize that we tell ourselves, and this is something that also I said in my lecture, that we understand that never again, because of the diaspora and the history of the Israelis and the Jewish people around the world, we are very much there to be there and to be successful. So it's kind of, it's in our blood.
Yeah. And how would you describe you as negotiator? Because I can see that after your presentation that you might be tough negotiator, aren't you?
That we're a tough negotiator? Well, it's not something I'm happy to say, but in many of the countries, you see a negotiation as a win-win situation. For the Israelis, because we dare to success and be, you know, just to many of the times we see the situation as a win-lose situation. And sometimes, yes, we're tough. We'll do almost everything in order to succeed.
And you said before a few things that you think that Israelis can learn from Sweden. And what do you think that the world can learn from you?
Well, to dare, to learn from the failures, not to accept the failure as a deadline, just to keep on trying, and to believe that at the end of the day, everything will be okay. And we're dealing these days with COVID-19, and the innovative way of the Israelis to think outside of the box is actually amazing when we speak about and we think about the startup nation. But when we think about the corona, well, we're dealing with something else. Maybe dealing with COVID-19, we need to be more organized and stay in the circle and not to color outside of the lines. But yes, regarding startups and innovation, it's true that people can learn from us to think outside of the box and not to and to understand that at the end of the day, things will be okay, and it's important to keep on trying.
And you talked about Corona, and I'm very curious to know what's the situation of the COVID-19 there in Israel.
Well, it's tough. We just ended our second lockdown in Israel. People already start speaking about the third one. I live in Tel Aviv. I don't live in a big apartment, just a small one, with 3 children, and I think it's very challenging for all of us. And I miss the delegations that arrive to Israel. I miss the face-to-face interactions, the faces, the body language, the emotions. I spoke about that Israelis build trust by building relationship. It's extremely difficult to build relationship in virtual communication. So I'm really miss that communication of meeting the people and actually having the small talk, not in the lecture, but after the lecture, to go to a restaurant, to just have a small talk about anything. That's actually the important thing.
And how's the relationship of the Israel people with smartphones, digitalization and all that? Are they very tech in that sense?
Oh yeah, of course. We're very tech. And speaking about generations, I can see my children, they can teach me how to use tech. I mean, they do it from day one. People in Israel are very tech, no problem. It's not about technology. Research speaks about working virtually in 2 terms. It's about being connected and about feeling connected. So there is less problem with the being connected. We have all the needed application. The problem or the challenge is the feeling connected, is what we can do above and beyond the technology. Something that even the AI will not replace, the emotions and the contact that we are missing.
Yeah, and I was thinking that you mentioned many, many times that building trust is very important for you. And now we have many startups and many actually corporates that are going to meet companies from Israel online. Which can be your maybe 1 or 2 advices on how to build trust in these 20 minutes that they have with an Israel company?
Well, Zoom, and I'm promoting Zoom right now, they enable us to divide the meetings into separate rooms, actually, that you can have one-on-one talks. So it will be interesting to raise a topic, divide all the group into smaller groups, let them know one another, let them feel the connection and build trust, and then get back to the group and to continue and share the discussion. But actually the breakout rooms, that's an amazing tool that helps people in Israel and people around the world to build trust and feel the personal connection.
Yeah, actually the meetings that they are going to have are going to be one-on-one on breakout rooms. So what would you say are the biggest do's and the maybe 2 or 3 do's and don'ts when you meet an Israel company?
Well, my recommendation is actually, and you said it's one-on-one, it's okay to share some time for small talk at the beginning. Don't run into the business arena at the beginning. Speak about COVID, speak about the weather, speak about Netflix, because we don't have the cinema. So find movies or series that you watch in Netflix. Find topics that you can discuss about. And then you will continue from that small talk to feel that if you have the bonding or you don't have the bonding. So regarding recommendation is yes, to have something for the small talk in order to build trust and not to be offended from the directness, from the Israeli personal questions, from the Israeli straight kind of style of speech. Understand that English is a second language for us, also for you, but for Israelis, sometimes it is a challenge and something that I struggle on my daily basis. So don't be rushed with judging your counterpart, but actually ask another questions if you feel that maybe there was a misunderstanding.
And something that they should avoid speaking, for example.
No, we kind of easygoing people. If you can feel comfortable with us, and because we're using a straightforward or direct style of speech, I think that if people in Israel will be offended, they will tell you. So it's not like working with people that are more diplomatic, that it's how to read the map. With Israel, you will see the faces, you will see the body language, you will understand. So don't be afraid to speak about anything. And that's the pluses, the way I see it. Moving forward, if you are going to work with Israelis and speaking about the innovative kind of spirit, I do recommend you to divide any kind of project into smaller parts that you will feel the control. So don't say, well, let's meet in a month after you're already building something. Let's have a meeting every week and keep on going on the same process and be updated on the daily basis, actually.
That's a good advice, actually. So you advise them to follow up quite often, for example.
Right. Make sure that Israelis are not going to a different directions because they think it's a better idea.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of any other questions. You know that you can leave questions in the chat as well. And you talked a lot about the know better. And for example, here in Sweden, it's like something that is almost forbidden to say. I would say that people cannot say so much about the we know better than you. Right. But what do you think? Because I'm trying to think of a question about that, because I thought it was something very interesting, actually, from your presentation.
I remember that I provided a lecture via Zoom not long ago to someone in Germany. And I told him, well, I wrote the book, Israeli Business Culture, and I just grabbed the book and I put it in the screen and I said, this is the book. And he looked at me well and said, your Israelis are so self-promoting. He told me, well, he wrote many books. He never puts his book in front of the camera. So, it's just something to think about. It's not that we are full of ourselves, not at all. I think it's the style of communication, which is fine. So don't be embarrassed to speak about yourself too.
And which are the areas, actually, that you are good at in business? I mean, for example, I know that cybersecurity is something very important in Israel. Am I right?
Yeah, sure. We have a lot of companies regarding cybersecurity, very successful around the world. It's a lot about, the experience back in the army. Officers served in the army for many years, and they the founders, many of the times it's a group of people that actually served together in the army, and they decided later on to build their own company. So yes, they are very successful around the globe. Unfortunately, the situation in Israel has taught us, how to behave and what to do regarding the topic of cybersecurity and some other topics too.
And which other areas are you, the Israel technology here is great?
I feel that we are everywhere. in medicine, in agriculture. It's actually, if we have the desert over here, so we will find solutions. If we feel that with automotive we can do better, so we'll come with better solutions. And again, it's not that we're coming to the best solutions ever, but we do it quickly, we do it cheaper, and it's a step that if we think about collaboration, is to think how the whole can be greater than the sum of its parts. So if people in Sweden, the US, UK, Germany can come with better strategies, able to look into the small details, they can help us, the Israelis, actually maximize the product that we thought about. So again, working with synergy, empathy, all that will help a lot.
And do you know which kind of solutions, for example, when an Israel company is like looking for startups to collaborate, or they are looking for new technology from outside Israel, do you know which kind of solutions are they interested?
No idea. I mean, it depends on the company. I work with many, so I know different stories, but I think that belongs to them. But I'm sure, when speaking about the global community, so everything is out there. There is an interest to any product, any idea, and if you have a very good idea, so I think it's wonderful to collaborate.
Yeah. Well, I don't have more questions myself. Is there anything?
You had a lot of very good questions, by the way.
Oh, thank you. But if there's something that you like, your final advice to someone that is like putting their eyes in Israel, what would you say?
Well, nothing special. I think that I share with you some stories that you can learn from. But I think that that's a lot about the intuition, about specific situation. Cultural intelligence is actually the ability to interact with people from all over the world. And it's a combination of 4 parameters. So it's your CQ, Q for quotient. So it's your CQ drive, your CQ knowledge, your CQ strategy, and then CQ action. And I think that if you come with empathy to all that, and you do have the drive and the knowledge, then you will be able to translate all that into strategy. You will know how to take decisions and how to negotiate in a real situation. So it's all about cultural intelligence and building trust while working together.
Yeah, thank you so much, Osnat.
Thank you.
And well, and to the rest, we have on, I would say 20 minutes, we have another session on how to do business, this time with France. Okay.
Interesting.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.